couple of days back, which was expanding and simplifying an expression. And so it's just going through a lot of the skills that you need to apply to be successful when you're working with this kind of algebra. Okay, so this was the example. Everyone worked through this previously, but it's a good one for me to just go through again so you can look back at this. Okay, so what we've got to think about when we're doing an example like this is where we're starting and particularly how we're going to do it properly. Now, if you remember back to our order of operations, so this is when we're talking about BODMAS, or it might be called BEDMAS or something like that, depending on which book you've learned it from. We've got to start by thinking about what we're doing with our brackets, and almost always, if we expand our brackets, that will allow us to move on with the rest of simplifying the expression. So I'm going to start there. Now remember, we need a technique to make sure we expand our brackets correctly. So I'm going to opt for the clause. So the clause are going to tell me that I need to multiply everything outside the bracket by everything that's inside the bracket. Now there's a couple of tricks here that tend to mix people up, and they're mainly to do with the signs on numbers. Now remember that the 5 has a plus in front of it, so even though there's no sign written, it must be plus 5. Now what you've got to remember is that that sign belongs to the number after it. So the plus belongs to the 5, and in the same way the minus sign here belongs to the 3, and this negative sign belongs to the 4, and this belongs to the 2, and so on. So it's important that when we're doing our operations, those signs are always staying in the right place. Okay, so let's start expanding. Now, first thing I've got to do, whenever I'm simplifying something in maths, the next line of the equation has to have the same value as the line above. So this is why we're always putting an equals sign in. If we don't, then strictly speaking, what we're putting on the page doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Okay, so let's do some expanding. So starting off at the very start, now almost everyone gets this bit right. 5 times x is 5x, so that's pretty easy. Then, when things start to go a little bit wrong is what is going on in the next step. Now, I'm going to show you a long version for this bracket, and I'll show you a slightly shorter version for what I do with that bracket, the second bracket on the right hand side. So, we're going to start off with this one here. So I've got 5 times x is 5x, that's pretty easy. Then what I'm going to write is, okay, so it's plus 5 is the number here, multiplied by negative 3 is the number here. So I haven't yet worked this out, but I have expanded the bracket. So that's done for this at this stage. We'll come back and work that out in a moment. Okay, so then what have we got when we're moving on to the next bracket? Now we've obviously got a sign here, so the negative sign stays where it is. Now I could write negative 4 times 2x in the same way that I wrote 5x minus 3 for this previous one. But what I'm going to do instead is just work that out in my head. Now I know that 4 times 2 is 8. Now there's only one negative sign, so my answer must be negative, so I get negative 8x. Now, where people tend to get confused in this particular one is with the next multiplication. Now I've got to multiply my 4 by my negative 2. I'm going to just do this in one step here though, just to show you that you can do this, and for some of you it's perfectly fine. So rather than writing negative 4 times 2 and then evaluating that on the next line, well, I know that 4 2s are 8, and I also know that a negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. So that one's done. Okay, then we're done with our brackets. We've actually expanded this. So then all we're left with is the plus 3x and the plus 11. Now, we didn't have anything to do with those yet. But now, so we're done with our brackets. So now we're going to have a look down our order of operations. Now, there's no indices or things with higher orders here, so we're not worried about that. So where we're up to now is our division and multiplication. Okay, so again, writing equals. Now, 5x not doing anything with that just at the moment. The only multiplication I've got to worry about is this one here with these, with the plus 5 and the negative 3. Now, I could have done that in one step, but if you want to do the steps like this, where you show the multiplication first and then evaluate it, that's perfectly fine. So in this case, 3 5s are 15, and a positive multiplied by a negative will give me a negative answer. Okay, now the rest of the terms we haven't done anything with yet, so I'm just going to write them down. And then we get to the simplifying part. Now simplifying is where the first thing we need to do is think about our like terms. Now if I think about the terms in this equation here, I've got terms with x's in them that are like, and I've also got terms with that are just numbers, so they have no pronumeral and they are like. Now when we're grouping like terms, sometimes you can just look at them and add them up in your head. So you might go, well, 5 minus 8 is negative 3, plus 3 is 0, so I've got 0 x's. So you might do that in your head, and that's fine. For simple examples, that's certainly relatively easy to do. But you can also group them on paper. Now, the only thing you've got to remember is that the sign belongs to the number after it. So if I want to group my x's, well, 5x is there. Now one thing that might help is to put the positive terms first, because it's a lot easier to add up positive numbers and then subtract negative ones. So I'm going to write 5x, and then the next positive x term is plus 3x, so the plus belongs to the 3. And then the last next x term is negative 8x, so I'm going to put that one there. Then with my numbers, I could do the same thing actually. I can write the positive numbers first, so I can write plus 8, plus 11, and then minus 15. Okay, and then we just have to figure out what that is. So like I said before, we've just got to add up the coefficients here of the x's. So 5 plus 3 is 8. Now minus 8 is 0x. Now I don't have to write 0x, but I want to tell you about it in a moment. 8 plus 11 is 19. Minus 15 gives us 4, so positive 4. Now, what people often get a bit confused about in questions like this is they get muddled up between 0x, which is no x's, which in fact equals 0, and just x, which in fact is 1x. Now, if you've got 1x or x, that is definitely not the same as 0x, which is 0. So in this case, what we're left with is 0 x's, and if you remember, 0 times anything is 0. So this term just vanishes completely. It's fully cancelled. So all we're left with is 4. So hopefully you found this a useful example of the expansion first, following the crab clause to expand. Now you can either work out the multiplications in one step, or you're welcome to write the two factors multiplied together. Then you work out all the multiplication from the expansion, group your like terms, and then simplify.